But I'm like, yeah, this is what I set out not to do. What the hell am I doing? I felt like I needed to prove myself, not only to myself, but the rest of the medical community, that optometrists are good, knowledgeable, conscientious, healthcare practitioners, right? What I didn't expect, was really just how hard the people management part of running a practice was, just the human resources piece.
This is Optometrists Building Empires, and I'm your host, Ankit Patel. Each week, we'll explore the journey of practice ownership and leadership in optometry. Join us for insights and strategies from the top minds in our field. This show is sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team helps your office increase revenues, reduce costs, and reduce staffing headaches. Let's build your empire together. Today's guest is someone who's got a really interesting story. He's an optometrist, healthcare leader, and eye disease specialist. He previously led one of the U.S. Navy's largest optometry departments while serving as an officer. He now runs and leads a primary care clinic providing comprehensive vision and medical optometry services. He's president at River Valley Eye Professionals. Please welcome Dr. Nathan Heilman. Nathan, welcome.
Hi, Ankit. Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You got a super interesting background, so we decided, excited to dig into it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
So what was the most important thing that helped you grow your empire?
Really, it was the support system that I was kind of able to build around me along the way. No one person I think can go this kind of journey alone. I used to kind of think that, but with all the individuals around me, including my family, mentors that I was lucky enough to meet, the team members that I was able to sort of bring aboard and were kind enough to kind of stay on all these years, as well as a professional network that I ran into a little later in my career. All of those really helped me to expand my perspective and build something here that I could continue to grow. And I knew that would continue to endure well after I was gone.
Yeah, I like that. And so tell me a little bit more about what that means. Like, when was there a time that it was difficult to keep those people around you, or when they really came in, like they were really like saved you or helped you transform? Like, give me a story that really resonates with you viscerally about how that helped.
It sounds cliche, but it really revolves around the time of the pandemic, right? When everything was shut down and we had to really drill down everything we had into just myself, my office manager, and an optician. We were the only three, running what was otherwise a 3 to 4 doctor clinic at the time. And what I learned is that just having sheer grit and determination and, sort of a will to live, if you will, is often not enough to sustain, something that is bigger than you. And one of the biggest sort of shifts for me kind of came as realizing, yeah, there's no way I can do this all alone. And I kind of said, okay, if we're going to continue to do this after everything, the dust settles and we can continue forward, I need to rethink how I approach things, because putting myself all into that, it's a one-way ticket to burnout. And so it was kind of during that time I kind of had this sort of, not an epiphany, if you will, but just a real realization that, any hard worker, any optometrist, I think in our particular profession, they're a hard worker. They're smart people. They really are determined, to make a go of things. And by and large, I think we're raised to kind of think that settling on ourselves as the most reliable piece of that is kind of where you go. But a major shift for me actually came after reading a book that was introduced to me by a colleague, and it's called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. Maybe you read it, but it's kind of a broad, reaching, topic of why, most, 70-80% of small businesses in the US fail. And the major thing that I took away from it is that you can have a really ambitious, very intelligent, absolutely tireless individual that starts a business for altruistic reasons. But unless they are able to surround themselves with individuals, other individuals, and systems that they can build that can sort of run themselves independent of that individual, all you end up really owning is a job. You don't
Mhm.
own a business. You just basically own the job. And so that's where most people wind up saying, okay, I've built this business. It's really successful, but I can't sustain this. And eventually it ends up failing because they don't scale properly. They don't build the systems that run the business, or they don't recruit people to run those systems properly. They're the people and the systems, and it just fails. And so that was the biggest thing for me that says, okay, if I can't do it myself, what do I need? And so at that time too, I was lucky enough to be introduced to a professional peer group that made me realize that I still needed to surround myself with people who were smarter than me, that were going through some of the same challenges that I was. And that was a game changer. I no longer felt like I needed to be the smartest person in the room or feel like I had to go it alone. With their help, I was able to take my practice to a much higher level of performance and growth. And I really learned an absolute ton from them about how to really make an optometry practice specifically successful.
Can you tell me a little about that? I don't know if you can share information, like what group was it, or just curious what? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. Yeah, no, it was Kleinman Performance Partners was the group I was originally introduced to. Just a great premise where I don't know if you're familiar. I mean, many docs listening might be already familiar with this, and there are similar, groups out there to it where you kind of put a group of doctors, fellow optometrists from around the country, different parts of the world, into a room, and they all kind of bring current issues, problems that they're facing in their practice, and say, "This is what I need help with," and all the other doctors in your peer group sort of sound off and provide insight and advice to how to solve that problem, because maybe they've already dealt with that problem and they
Yeah.
solved it. Maybe they dealt with that problem and they failed, and they learn from your difficulties and your challenges. And so together, putting all that into a room can be a tremendous vehicle for growth and just knowledge expansion, and really just being comfortable dealing with all the different personas that you have to be as a practice owner. I mean, you have to be sort of a babysitter, you have to be a mentor, you have to be a good financial guy or gal. All these hats that you wear can be a tremendous burden when we're clinicians, we're trained doctors, and it's, again, it kind of sounds cliche, but we really aren't trained as well as we probably should be, for entering the world of business.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good insight, and I know, like, what is it, IDOC, Vision Source, I think they all have some group, and there's also outside groups as well, so that's a constant thing we keep hearing is, like, mentorship and getting help and support.
Absolutely.
So as you're growing your practice, what did you run into that you didn't expect? The proverbial, like, oh, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. What I didn't expect, was really just how hard the people management part of running a practice was, just the human resources piece. Especially when you have, a larger practice, like I have now. I have roughly about 20 individuals, outside of just providers in our practice that kind of make the system go. And dealing, with all of the individual personalities, learning what motivates some individuals and demotivates others, and just trying to keep them all focused on a common goal is extremely challenging. And I found that to be really the most challenging pillar to surmount, trying to build the practice here. And it's actually one of the reasons, why I, kind of chose to go a different direction eventually, because it's a challenge. It's tough unless you can find a good office manager too. And that's always difficult to find, as a trusted first mate that can run your ship when you're just trying to take a nap.
Yeah. Yeah, those are definitely hard. So tell me about, you kind of alluded to it, but what are you doing now?
What I'm doing now is I actually ended up, after quite a bit of introspection and analysis, decided to sell my practice to a management services organization almost 9 months ago now. It's been about 9 months and it's been going well. Um, but I did that not just to sort of take a step away and say, I give up, but to form more of a strategic partnership to help me continue to focus on what I do well. And that's, really be a clinician and help to mentor, my associate doctors here. but I wanted to kind of do three things, and it helped me to maintain the legacy of my practice. Our name, our brand didn't change with the sale. So we are still, River Valley Eye Professionals. We're not My Eye Doctor. We're not some other name that a private equity firm comes in and sort of bestows upon us. We didn't change in terms of who we were. So that was really important to me, was to maintain the legacy of the practice that, I and my predecessor, the gentleman I bought the practice from, built. The second thing is I wanted to be able to provide an overall better benefits, and upward mobility opportunities for my staff, because my staff are amazing. They're just a really great group of people. I've been blessed to be surrounded by just really good-natured, hardworking souls who I wanted to be able to provide more to than I felt that just as a small business owner individually could do, with just the way the market and the way the business environment, especially in optometry, is changing. And then the final reason that I wanted to make this change was just probably because of the overall market pressures and things like that I was seeing, kind of coming down the pipeline for a larger practice like mine. Being able to transition it successfully to an individual or group of individuals privately was not looking as simple, especially in my area of the world. So I'm kind of in a suburban location, it's kind of suburban rural, and finding individuals that want to live and work and sort of invest themselves in this smaller community has kind of proven to be difficult. So that was the other thing that kind of drove me to say, look, I think I need to take advantage of this partnership opportunity now, for those reasons. Otherwise, I'm going to have to make a harder decision potentially down the road.
Yeah. That's a tough decision, right? And so,
Yeah.
so tell me a little bit about how has the transition been? Like, what do you see? Like, what are you most excited about as you continue to grow? Like, yeah, tell me more about that.
Yeah. Obviously any change is hard. There were some definite systems changes that challenged staff a bit. And I've asked a lot of my staff over the years. I'm kind of an individual that's always looking for a bigger, better way to do things. I never just sort of settle for the status quo. So I think they were already a little impatient with me. It was like, oh, here we go. Dr. Heilman's changing something again. But this was a bigger animal that really kind of changed the systems where our optical, by and large, is now, run by an outside entity. The ordering, the actual inventory management, all of that is just now independent of my influence. And, quite frankly, I'm not a big optical guy. I never was. I don't like dealing with optical. I think it's a means to an end. So that wasn't something that broke my heart to let that go, but it was actually something that my staff really liked. I realized after the fact. So that was hard for them to sort of swallow it. And in a way, it made them feel like I didn't appreciate what they were doing. And I tried to make it as clear as possible. It wasn't about that. It was about making sure that we can maintain a healthy, optical and practice in a retail setting that's becoming more and more competitive, not only now, but many years down the road. And I've actually seen that that's paid off. We're doing well. Our capture rate actually improved. Our overall profitability in the optical has remained level, if not improved. So it was a gamble, but it actually, I'm really excited to see that is something that is flourishing after the sale and not, dwindling opposite to what I was hopeful of. So that's the one thing that I'm really happy to see, is that that's going well. And to be honest, the clinical side, just taking care of patients day to day hasn't changed a bit. It's almost like nothing changed. So it's really kind of a smooth transition, smoother than some. One of the biggest challenges I hear other offices that have partnered with this group face is changing their EHR. So we have Revolution. We've been using it for about 15 years now. And when I found out that I didn't have to change my EHR, I'm like, sold. Just show me the money. I want to make sure that this is easy. And that really made all the difference, was having the EHR that they wanted and not having to make that transition. Because if you've ever gone through an EHR change, it's awful, right?
Yes.
It's not easy.
Yeah. And I have a little bit of a technical background, so I think that's it's still kind of a pain. So
It helps, but it's still not only just for you, but it's just staff and getting everybody to navigate through that.
That's on a side note, that's usually the test is like, okay, how much does the staff complain about the new system after a weekend? Right.
Right, right, right.
So the last one we switched to, and actually knock on wood, was easy enough. So I think we're good. We're good for a while. So
Awesome. Good. Yeah.
yeah. So tell me a little bit about, you talked about it a little bit, right? I think folks are having trouble with staffing.
Yeah.
So what is it that, how are you all dealing with that now? How did you
Mhm.
deal with it? What are some successful strategies? Because it sounds like that's a really important strategy for you is the people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's quintessential, to just our brand here. Because the one thing I hear from patients time and time again is it's just every time I come here, I just really think you have the best staff. You're just the nicest people. I just really want you to know that. And I take that really to heart, say thank you. I'm glad to hear that you like them as much as I do. But the strategy is really when you interview, I don't interview somebody for skills. I interview somebody for just do they have the right personality? Do they have the right traits? Because you can train skills, right? But you can't necessarily train someone to have the soft skills, to have the emotional intelligence, to have the right way that they handle themselves with patients on a day-to-day basis. You can pick that up just from having a conversation about anything. And so we've actually brought in a number of individuals that really had no prior training, but they had just the right personality traits that we thought would blend well with our group so that everybody kind of gets along, if you will. I think that's important. But not only that, just how do they relate to patients? Do they have common sense? Do they have a way of broaching uncomfortable subjects in a way that is, again, emotionally intelligent and validates the individual without being defensive, without jumping to conclusions. So that is how I think we were able to build a good group of people is we just shopped around for the right personality traits.
Yeah, I like that. So is there a specific like secret sauce that you look for? Like, how did you know that they weren't like the one? Yeah.
It's a good question. I would just put it down to guts. It's just kind of a gut feeling. Not only from myself, but I also, have a couple other higher, level staff that I've trusted to kind of give me their insights as well. And right after an interview, we can kind of look at each other and say, yep, she's got that's the person that we want. And we've definitely taken people with lesser experience, lesser skills for those that have those personality traits that we just kind of have a feeling for. We just know that they're going to fit well. And we're willing to take a chance on versus somebody. It's like, okay, they're more skilled. But I also have kind of found that individuals with less skill are more malleable
Mm.
to your way of doing things. If you're looking for individuals that have greater skill sets and sort of set in their ways, sometimes it's difficult for them to blend into your system, right? Say, well, I know you've done it that way for 20 years, Edith, but what we need to do here is just, if you can do it just a little bit differently, we'd appreciate that. And sometimes people just don't budge. They're like, no, I'm doing it my way or the highway. And it's like, well, okay, well then we have another decision we have to make.
Yeah. I find that really true as well. And looking for, they may not be expert or in what I'm looking for, but they've mastered other things, right? They're able to learn.
Yep. They just have those qualities that are just kind of those soft skills, those intangibles that you just sort of have a gut feel for. I can't explain it any better than that. I'm certainly not the right guy to talk to about human resources. I think that's really that guiding light has just kind of been that internal sixth sense of, I think you fit the bill. I think you're going to fit in well here. And some have worked out and some haven't, but they've always been individuals for the most part that have self-selected. If this is not the right thing for them, they say, you know what, thank you for the opportunity, but I'd like to be on my way. I've been fortunate enough not to have to fire too many people, over the years.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. I think that's not many people can say that. So
I've been fortunate. Yeah, I've been lucky.
So you're kind of transitioned to being, just being a doctor right now, right? What's in your future? What are you looking forward to? What are you planning on doing?
Yeah, that's a great question.
What does that look like?
Still figuring it out. to be honest with you. I just kind of like being sort of just more of just in the chair again, being able just to focus primarily on patient care. But yeah, beyond that, um, looking to do a little bit more of the administrative portion, the consulting work, kind of the individual that's not in the lane, but kind of be the mentor for the younger up and coming docs to kind of give them guidance on the how tos. Sort of being the sage that is always present, but not doing. I'm doing more of the guidance, but I'm not doing the doing anymore. And one of the opportunities that I have with this uh, network that I partnered with, or this buyer that I partnered with, is the practices that join this network within the state fall kind of under my PC, if you will. So I would be an overseer of their office as well. So I'm kind of looking forward to doing that instead of just being in the clinic, and then just having free time to take advantage of other interests I have. I enjoy cycling just to kind of get out and do a little bit more of that. I enjoy photography, very amateur, but I do enjoy it. And I'd like to, dig in a little bit more with that, and just having more time to spend with my kids, because, it's a demand on your time when you're running a business. And they've made a lot of sacrifices. So they're one of the reasons that I'm here, but they're also one of the reasons that I want to take a step back and have more time to watch them, especially as they move out, go to college. I want to be able to attend the sporting events. I want to be able to attend, all the activities and moments in life that pass you by so quickly, and say, shoot, man, I don't want to miss that.
No, that's great. I think that's, it's interesting. So I'm looking at your arc, and, you start off military, and we'll talk about that here in a second. I'm curious about that. But then you get out, you have your private practice. You're like, you know what? I think I can grow this, right? Let me see what I can do here. Let me do my own and try it out. And you're like, you know what? I think after a time, I think I know what I really want to really like. And I want to go to the next phase of my life, which is, I'm going to move, still practice, but not be the primary point, not owner of the practice, but I still want to be involved, and then kind of figure out what the second or third stage in the career looks like.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And then look, that's a pretty cool arc that I don't hear as often, right? Because I don't think people have this.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like we feel stuck, right? It's like, do I have? I have to stay here. Or we're forced to sell when we don't want to sell, right? Because like it's history, yeah. And it's like, okay, what now? So that actually seems to be a pretty common arc with a lot of optometrists. Actually, they start their practice, they sell it, and then they have a second career after that, or a third career, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so it's kind of neat to hear you go through that. So, now I'm curious, the Navy, I knew a few doctors that did that path. Curious, what was your experience? Why the Navy versus going out in private practice? Talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah. So going into my senior year, of college, actually toward the end of my senior year of college, I was just expecting to just fly into optometry school. And of course, the biggest anxiety that I had at the time was, how am I going to pay for this? So I'm looking at, financing options, talking with my parents, things like that. And then one day, a recruiter happened to show up on campus, and he was from the Navy, and they were offering something called the Health Professions Scholarship Program. And so it was just a program that offered either a 2 to 4 year repayment of your educational costs in return for 3 to 4 years of active duty service. And so I never pictured myself as a military guy. I got to be honest. I have plenty of folks that in my family that served in the Navy as well. So that was kind of another influential factor. But I talked with my father, and he said, you would be a fool not to apply for this. And he looked at me like in a way he's never looked at me. He said, you'd be a fool to not do this. What are you thinking? So I'm like, okay. And I thought I'd have, a pretty minimal chance of getting it, because I think they only gave out like 4 to 6 scholarships that particular year. So I thought, what the hell, I'll give it a shot. I may not get it, but at least I can say I gave it the old college try. And much to my surprise, after going through the whole process, which was kind of arduous, there were multiple interviews, essays, physical examinations, you name it. It was pretty arduous application process. I get a phone call one morning that says, hey, Nate, I got some good news for you. You were offered one of the scholarships. And I was just sort of like shocked. I didn't really even know what to say. I said, cool.
Yeah.
Well, so what's next? He says, well, you have to let me know within 24 hours whether you want it or not. So I'm like, okay. let me get back to you because I was just sort of not even expecting that news at all. And it's a pivotal thing because you're committing, the next 8 years of your life to school and the military. And I'm thinking, am I military material? Can I do this? And so I consult my family members and friends, and they all said the same thing. It's like, why wouldn't you do this? And so, yeah, I threw caution to the wind and took what was before me, kind of tried to see the opportunities before me and take advantage of them, not see the negatives, but all the positives. And it worked out great. It's one of the best decisions I ever had the opportunity to make.
Yeah, that's it's interesting because I think when you talk about like timing, because I think I've heard people go in after school as well, right? So they don't necessarily to help pay off their debt. That sounds like a common path as well. So I think, especially now with loans being as high as they are, it's not an uncommon.
Oh yeah.
thing.
If there's an opportunity out there that people are presented with, I would always encourage you to look at that because it's just a tremendous way to free you of that debt burden and give you a place to practice right out of the gate without having to worry about where am I going to go? What am I going to do? Am I going to do a residency or not? All those kinds of things. So it was just sort of there, and it just made it so much easier. And the experience that I had while I was I stayed 4 years. I was at the Great Lakes Naval Training Center, or Great Lakes. They had 3 different kind of commands there. There's 3 different boxes that the Great Lakes Naval Base has. They've got a recruit training command. They had the Naval Hospital command, and then they had like a naval training school where they had different educational tracks for individuals going into different occupations within the service. So it's kind of like a big naval college, a hospital, and a recruit training command all in one. And I got to practice in all those environments. Especially the hospital one was great because I saw stuff that I never dreamed of seeing, even in the recruit training command. So it actually wound up being a wonderful clinical experience.
And it kind of leads me to my next question, Nathan, is share with me a story that was formative for you, like made you who you are today. So it could have been the military, could have been before, but yeah, give me a story that made you who you are.
Yeah, there's one that always kind of comes to mind, I guess, when I'm kind of asked a similar question. And it's not necessarily one particular story, but it's just kind of one that just encompasses how I was raised and the parents that I had, how they did their thing. So I always kind of look at my father really as sort of the individual who I modeled myself after. He was a physician. And so I kind of learned early on what it was like to be, in the world of medicine. And I always looked up to that and thought this would be kind of a really cool thing to do. I always, looked at what he did was really important and really, valued. And I always wanted to do something with my life of value. And so I thought, hey, how nice would this be? But at the same time, I looked at his life and how medicine sort of took him over, right? It was all encompassing. He ate, he breathed, slept, and ate work. I mean, he was just a workaholic. And that was something I didn't want, right?
Yeah.
So I was able to kind of see the good and maybe the not so favorable part of being a physician. So I didn't want to be a physician, but I knew I wanted to be something in the medical field. And I was always kind of, I don't know, the brainy kid. I was always naturally just kind of good at school. It wasn't even something, there was a pressure there, to perform well because I thought there was some kind of standard I had to live up to. But when I was going through, high school and you kind of go through these aptitude tests where they try to place you into different careers, I kept getting the result that I was supposed to be like an engineer or something. I'm like, engineer? What the hell is that? I don't want to be an engineer. It sounds so boring. But knowing that and knowing that I wanted to do something in the medical field, I also had a family friend, a friend of my parents who was an optometrist in the small town I grew up in. And so I just kind of asked and I said, hey, I'm kind of interested in something, in the medical field, and I don't know much about this eye care stuff. Can I come and just hang out with you a day or two just to shadow you? This was in high school. And he said, sure. So I spent a couple of days with him and I fell in love with it. I was just kind of like, this is amazing. I get to do all the, medical tinkering. I get to do all the numbers and stuff and how my brain works. And I also kind of get to take care of people and do the other part that I always saw myself doing. And it was a really great marriage of kind of what I wanted. But it was really through sort of observing, how hard my father worked,
Yeah.
where I always kind of felt the obligation. I don't know if it's the right thing to do, but I wanted to live up to what I thought, were his and others' expectations of me. And so that's kind of what formed me into just being who I am. I'm a hardworking person. I'm dedicated. I just want to take care of people. And at the same time, I think a lot of us that are in the healthcare field, we value that, but we also value being appreciated for what we do. And that's something I wanted to do too. I want to do something of value that I felt like was being appreciated. So here we are.
Well, that's good. Well, I'm glad that it worked out. So, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your younger self coming right out of OD school, or even in your case, we could also shift it to either OD school or right out of the military, because
Mhm.
you kind of had it was a pretty clear path from OD school to military, but at the point of the
Yeah.
military school, then I was like, what do I do now?
No, I think it would have to be after the military,
Okay.
kind of what next kind of a thing. And the advice that I would give myself at the time was not to chase prestige. Because one of the mistakes I think I feel that I made was chasing a job, chasing the prestige of a job, coming out of optometry school. And maybe other people feel this too. I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I felt like I needed to prove myself, not only to myself, but the rest of the medical community, that optometrists are good, knowledgeable, conscientious, healthcare practitioners, right? We're not just lens flippers. We're not just glasses and contact lens pushers. We take care of people in a very unique, very special way. And I didn't think that I would be able to provide that level of higher care in certain practice settings, right? So instead of looking in a location, because that's what I even tell students that I've been lucky enough to teach, and other kids that kind of come through and say, should I do optometry as a career? And I said, well, you can do anything you want. But I say the one thing that I would always recommend you do is find out where you want to be. Where in the world do you want to end up first? Look there. And then that's what's going to make you the happiest long term. Because if you just chase a job, what you're going to end up doing is probably finding out, okay, the job's nice, but I hate it where I live. I don't like the culture. I don't like the location. I want to be closer to family, whatever it is. But if you're in a location that you enjoy, eventually, I think the career opportunities will eventually come. But I chased a job, and I ended up 5 years in a different location working for an ophthalmologist. And I thought it would be a good learning opportunity, and it was, but it was also just the grind, and it was miserable. I mean, I'm working 60 plus hours a week. This is during the height of, when LASIK was still very popular. And so we're seeing, I don't know how many, 30, cases in a day, working from like 8 in the morning until 10 at night, just laser, 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 laser. And it was miserable. I'm like, this is not a life. And so, yes, I learned a lot, but if I had to do it all over again, I would pick a location first, and find an opportunity within that location.
It's interesting too, because you almost repeated the pattern that you did want to experience with your dad, right? You working 60 hours, that's all you did was chasing the work. It's interesting how patterns of behavior just come back.
100%, man. It was just like, so it was kind of what I knew, but I'm like, yeah, this is what I set out not to do. What the hell am I doing? And so, yeah, that's what I would change if I would change anything.
So, and this is, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. I'm just curious, how much of that prestige chasing led you to start a business, when maybe, did you feel like that was something you wanted to do, or was that more prestige chasing for you?
No, I always kind of saw myself as wanting to, run and own a practice. But the other part, when I looked at this prestige, right? When I came out of the service, I didn't see my coming out of the service as being very attractive to private practice owners, right? Because, I guess I looked at private practice from a small community, needing to have a strong medical background. And even though I didn't think it would translate well on a resume. And so I felt like I needed to have more experience under my belt before I saw what I saw as a very prestigious, kind of pinnacle of practice, clinical practice is owning your own. Who was going to think I was worthy, to run and own my own practice when I just had the limited experience that I had at the time? Because it was only military. It wasn't in the private sector.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't think very highly of myself. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I was gonna say almost like you're not feeling enough the whole time. It's
Right.
like, yeah, and now it's interesting because like you're probably one of the. It sounds like people really come to you for your expertise in your area, and yeah.
Like I say, I've been very fortunate, and just kind of follow the guiding light. And sometimes through stumbling and making a mistake and falling down a few times, it's really, how do you get back up and start over?
Yeah.
So I had to, and it was a good thing that I went through what I went through, because it did help me to really fully realize that I wanted to do it my way, right? I wanted to actually provide care to individuals in a way that I saw fit, that wasn't dictated by someone else that was telling me how long to work, how many patients to see, what I was supposed to be prescribing or not. I didn't want that dictated to me. And so that's really what drove me to private practice in the first place. But I also obviously, saw it as the best way to secure a financial future, as well as professional, fulfillment.
I think that's absolutely fair, right? I think that there's other reasons other than like, hey, status to start a business, and so yeah.
Yeah.
Now, last thing I want to ask you here because I'm curious is, would you ever do it again? Would you maybe down the road your non-compete ends? Maybe you want to move to the beach. I don't know. Or that, like like would you ever start a new practice again somewhere else? Or yeah.
Would I do it? Yeah, I would do it again. It's been a ride. There's definitely been obstacles. There's been challenges, but nothing that's not survivable. And I don't think that I would have enjoyed, doing things a different way. I really don't regret anything. So yeah, I'd do it again. Maybe a little bit differently, maybe a different location, other than, cold, wintry Minnesota, but I love the Midwest. So this is home, and yeah, I wouldn't do it different. I wouldn't do it differently.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful, right? After all these journeys, these ups and downs, it's like, hey, you know what? Would I do it again? Yeah. So that's telling.
Yeah, absolutely. Sign me up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, so Nathan, if people want to reach out to you, learn more about you or your company, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook as well. I kind of tinker around on that, but LinkedIn's probably the best way, to reach me, in that sense. I can provide you with my link. I don't know what it is offhand, but it'd be Nathan Heilman. I'm in Northfield, Minnesota. My practice is River Valley Eye Professionals. So look me up, give me a shout. Happy to speak with you further if you would find it helpful.
Yeah, and we'll put those in the show notes for folks too, so they don't have to search around for it either. So,
Sure.
So Nathan, thank you again for being on the show.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks again for having me. It was great.
I learned from our conversation is that life sometimes goes in waves, right? So, you have your expectations. Sometimes you do the exact opposite of your expectations, like working 60 hours a week when you didn't want to, but that was part of the journey. And, and the journey, if you really appreciate it, you don't mind doing it again. Like you just mentioned
No.
at the end, right? So it's like being happy and content and being at peace of where you are. And then obviously surrounding yourself with the right people. It sounds like that was a key for you to have that sense of happiness throughout the process.
That was the key, just kind of being humble enough to figure out, hey, I don't know it all. I will never know it all. And so who's smarter than me that can help me to make me a better me and make my practice a better practice? And then that really, ended up being a great decision. So good
That's
luck
good.
to everybody else out there.
Yeah. And thank you, audience. If you learned something or laughed, please share the podcast with a friend and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you click on the link below to book a meeting, I'll send you a free copy of my book, Optometry Redefined. Thank you again, Dr. Heilman, for being a guest on the show. This has been another exciting episode of Optometrists Building Empires, and we'll see you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Optometrists Building Empires. Thanks for joining. For show notes and more, visit buildingempires.live. This show is proudly sponsored by My Business Care Team. My business care team was born out of staffing challenges my wife and I faced together, managing multiple optometry locations. We refined our approach at Classic Vision Care and now offer our expertise to others. If you're experiencing challenges with staffing and you'd like to set up a discovery call, we'd be happy to help you and connect you with the right resources. We'll see you next time.